the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 311, Women as Dictators. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks, and tonight we've got an article about feminist goals for women in the words of the head of a major early 20th century feminist organization. But before we get into it, we gotta do what we gotta do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. So, last week we talked about getting into, at the end of the show, we talked about getting into some of the history of women's suffrage, and I'm adding stuff about that to the timeline, and I wanted to sort of go through. The suffragettes had a different pathway than men did to obtain the vote after laws and policy changed how women voted. Or whether women voted in a lot of areas, but there's a lot of other details to add as well, because the suffragettes weren't on board with the suffragists who were going for universal suffrage, including minority votes, and in particular the 15th Amendment, which we ended with, I believe, last week. Suffragettes opposed the passage of the 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which gave the vote to black men because they fought in a civil war. And it was directly connected. It wasn't something where, they're like, well, you're free now and you're citizens now, so you get to... No, it was because they fought in the Civil War. So there was blood, in that ink. Even if it was only figurative, there was blood in that ink. It was literal during the war, and it was literal in terms of how that vote was won. And suffragettes threw a temper tantrum about not getting the vote before black men. So I just want to point that out, right? So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to go over. But one of the things I want to point out is the philosophy of feminism that is behind their way of thinking. And we've talked a lot about it being a female supremacy movement. And feminists act like we're saying that women wanting to be able to have bank accounts and pay their own bills and take out loans and get bad credit if they don't pay it and so on is female supremacy. No. There's an actual history to this. So I have a document here. This is an archive of a document by the head of a major feminist organization. This is a little forward in time. We've jumped a bit forward in time for this. But it's an important mentality to understand. Because this is the way feminists talked about their situation. We will read this, and we will read probably in the next episode, because I don't think we'll get all the way through this in this episode. We'll read the Declaration of Sentiments from the Seneca Falls Convention next week or the week after, depending on how we get through stuff. Because those things, to understand what women in the United States were thinking, you need to understand those documents. And we're also going to talk about the women who organized the Seneca Falls Convention and what they were thinking, because they had some things on their mind, we'll say, that were not just about voting and equal rights and stuff. They were mad, and it goes right back to abolition. So, women have a particular type of narcissism that was at play here. So, let's get into the article. And I will point out before I talk about anything else, this article is titled by the writer. This isn't something that I made up. So, the writer, who is the president of the National Women's Party at that time, and she wrote this for a women's publication that is still, I think, in print, called the Ladies' Home Journal, in September of 1922. And she signed it Mrs. Oliver H.P. Belmont. Mrs. Oliver H.P. Belmont. You know, not her name, his name, because that carried more weight, right? And women used to do things in their husband's name everywhere they went, all the time, including spending money, accruing debt, and engaging in public activism like this. She just attached a man's name to a set of ideas and beliefs that she's about to disclose to the public.
That's insane.
Yeah, I wonder if she asked him first.
Yeah, of course not. Are you kidding me? No way.
Nope. So here we go. She says, 24 hours after the dedication of the Women's Parliament in Washington, and we'll go a little more over what that is later as well, so you understand. Women talk today like women had no power and no influence in the history, but America had something called the Women's Parliament in Washington, right? So there we go. The Ladies' Home Journal asked me what I really meant when I said that henceforth women are to be dictators. And I'm going to increase the size of this because this print is too damn small for my old lady eyes. So she said, right off the bat, women are to be dictators. She made no bones about it. She didn't do what feminists today do, where they try to be dictators and then they're like, well, men pass the laws. She didn't pass the buck.
Yeah.
She was the 40th or 50th person to have put the same question to me in that very limited space of time. I meant then, and mean now, exactly what I said. The end of the dictatorship of the world by men alone is in sight. We women have lived long enough in the cramped confines of a misfit social structure.
Oh my God, that was financed by that guy whose name you're using?
Yes.
Oh, hell.
This poor woman who didn't have to have a
so
job.
hard done by. She is so hard done by. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Give it a rest.
We have been forced to sit too long. We have been powerless for such an endless time that we have accumulated enough stored up energy to shape any structure to our will. Now, be aware, this
So
was
wait a
this was
minute.
published
Wait a
in a
minute.
national publication.
Are you powerless, or do you have all of this accumulated, stored up energy, or which is it? You can't be both. Like what? Oh,
This is getting better though. We know we can manage the house. We can reconstruct it.
okay.
We can put on a left wing and a right wing. We can add a sun porch to let in the light. We could even tear the house down if we liked, and I think men know that too. I don't think she's talking about construction work there, because
Yeah, no, no.
women didn't do that back then.
I was hoping that she was, speaking literally and not metaphorically, because
No, I think the only thing that Mrs. Oliver H.P. Belmont ever constructed in her life was a sandwich.
yeah, yeah. My God.
But if I'm just gonna show this really quick. It's kind of dark because it's a copy of a picture out of a magazine. But if you look, this woman she's middle-aged, but she's got her hair all done up. She's got jewelry. She has a nice dress, right?
Shoes.
Yeah, she's got nice shoes, right? And you can't tell a whole lot about her home, but I will bet you she never had a job out of necessity. Right? If she ever did have a job, it was because she wanted to work. So there we go. This is who we are listening to. Is a woman of means who had a platform, because here she is. She's the president of the largest feminist organization of her time. She is being interviewed by a national publication for women. Right? And nobody's stopping her. Nobody's arresting her for her activism or the things that she said or anything like that. So it's not, oh God, I stopped too soon. Let's go a little farther over here to the oh, come on. Move page. There we go. All right. So this image says Beacon Towers, Mrs. Belmont's residence at Port Washington, Long Island.
Jesus Christ.
That, my friends, is a mansion. That is a fortress.
Yes, it is.
You could put a university in that building.
Yeah, you could.
University during that time period. So yeah, this is upper class. Talking about what women can do, and using metaphors about housing construction. Should have known when she said sun porch, because poor people didn't need a porch to enjoy the sun. They worked in it all day.
Right.
Right? So yeah, there we go. The privilege of declaring yourself a dictator. In early 20th century America, when women didn't supposedly have any rights at all, like free speech. Oh no. Mr. 303 says Belmont pursued the wrong vampire. Oh. My friend, I adore you. You are fucking awesome. Oh, shit. So she says, after using a metaphor of something that she has never probably done in her entire life, maybe supervised, definitely didn't do. Oh my God. The time has come to take the world muddle that men have created. Civilization, that thing with indoor plumbing. Civilization, that thing with roads and mass transportation and
Right.
Oh my God.
All that protection from wild animals,
Having populated the entire world because you're able to sail around it in ships that are built by men, living in homes that are built by
Mhm.
men, protected by
Mhm.
weapons that are invented by men. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, using farming techniques to grow food that were invented by men.
Mhm.
Gee, that's horrible muddle. And yeah, so this woman was wealthy, well off, and she's sabotaging other women. So they tear their relations apart with their actions. That's a pretty good summary. LMIHK. It's so bizarre and
She this she's like a bored housewife with these visions of grandeur, and she's got nothing but to do but, dream up all of this shit of being a fucking dictator. You know what I mean? Just sit in your fucking mansion and count your money, lady. Why do you feel the need to change the world? You've got everything that you need.
I
But
think we
no.
found the anti-waifu.
Yes.
This is the anti-waifu. Oh jeez. Oh, so we have two super chats. Okay, that one's not for us. That's yesterday, and they were just doing a show, so they probably read it. But Richard Bier just posted today at 7:17. Trump has been found guilty on all counts according to the headlines. Judge actually instructed the jury that they didn't have to be unanimous on the individual charges in his over 50 pages worth of instructions. To Kill a Mockingbird wasn't supposed to be an instruction manual. And they gave us another $5 and said, so if women like her were running things, would slavery actually have ended at all? It's a good question. The suffragettes, some of the suffragettes were abolitionists, so they probably would have ended it. But the same suffragettes, some of the same suffragettes that were abolitionists did not. They were still very bigoted. They subscribed to social, not evolution. Shit, it's got another term. The idea that you consider some races superior to other races and you manipulate human breeding to reflect that. Gosh darn it. I can't believe that word like erased itself from my head even temporarily. That's just like really weird. It's because of like I got stressed out right before the show because of issues between yeah, social Darwinism. That's the term I was trying to think of. Um, but yeah, in any case, OBS and Restream decided to have a fight with each other like right before the show. Yeah, eugenics. That's probably the other thing I was trying to think of. So I'm like going back and forth, and there's two terms battling in my head. But it looked just like the fight from They Live. So very distracting. Much like feminism's fight with the patriarchy throughout history. Yeah, just like the fight from They Live. And the whole time, the patriarchy's been trying to get the women to see the truth, and they won't. Oh my gosh. So yeah, the muddle that men created and strive to turn into an ordered, peaceful, happy, abiding place for humanity. Because having cities organized so that your comfort level is maximized doesn't do that. No, there has to be grass huts and kumbaya in the woods or something. She says, in its present condition, the world is its own worst indictment against the sole dictatorship of men. She keeps going back and forth, right? Women have power, but we don't. Women have power,
Right.
but we don't. Which is it? She says, men have always obstructed and suppressed the intellectual one half of the human race. Oh, the intellect of one half the human race. Sorry. They have
Wait, so
always
wait a minute.
men make
So
women
you
stupid.
couldn't you couldn't outsmart them? You're so fucking smart you couldn't outsmart the men? You couldn't play their own game? You idiots. Oh my god. No, they beat us with their superior intellect. Come on.
Yep. Our superior intellect was no match for their superior intellect.
Right.
So we got a super chat, $5 Canadian from Albert Nader Retro. He says, I don't care what the suffragettes say. Jimmy the Greek was right. The black is the better athlete. Athlete. 3 syllables. Now there's one way to figure out who's better at athletics, and that's sports competitions, and you look at who dominates, and it's not a matter of eugenics and all that. It's a matter of either some people want it more, or some people are just naturally better at certain things, and
Hmm.
it's perfectly acceptable to acknowledge that, right? I'm talking about how trans women are beating women at everything in sports, by the way, guys. because they have so many years of male biology behind them. But yeah, it's fair. Yeah. Not that any group of people sucks, but we do see a lot of sports dominated by black people,
Hmm.
and that's pretty cool for them. Nobody should be mad about that. And we do see that men and women's sports get separated because, when you put some, even after you give a man female hormones and change his physique, he still beats women hands down
Hmm.
every time they compete.
Like there's not even a comparison.
Yeah,
It's just hands down. It's the facts.
yeah. Even the women that are great at stuff, like, usually cannot beat the men or the boys, and quite often adult women aren't as good athletes as teenage women because or teenage girls, because once you start filling out, as my grandmother used to put it, you become less ergonomic. And
Mm.
curves aren't made for running and shit. Like,
Yeah.
they're good for other things, but not so much for running. So let's see. She says, men have always worked for themselves. That's not sufficient. The error
Oh,
lies here. And I'm going to call bullshit on that.
wow. Wow.
Yeah. Because you look at the memes, the cute memes that feminists put out about, men will live like this and be perfectly happy. And it's like, I don't know, a lawn chair and a television and a game system. And it doesn't even matter which one. Like, they get upset no matter what it is, right?
Hmm.
But it's somewhat true. When you look at men who live lives where women are not at the center of their lives, um, whether it's MGTOW, whether it's gay men, whether it's men who just women can't seem to acknowledge them, whether it's men who are incels or men who are just at the bottom of the social totem pole, or rather below the last 2 rungs of the social ladder. They do live simpler lives. They don't complicate their lives with a bunch of bullshit. It's only when you let a woman into your house that you have to have a whole bunch of gadgets and stuff for kitchen comfort
Hmm.
and this
Hmm.
and that, and you have to have
Exactly.
decorations.
Exactly. I mean, what she said is so disrespectful to her husband. You know what I mean? Because I'm very sure that if they were living in a shack, just like what you said, she'd be complaining. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be good enough. She doesn't work because that's what he wants to do. He doesn't amass all of this fortune because that's his only desires for. You know what I mean? Like he's doing it for you too, you dumbass.
Yup.
I guarantee everything that she has, everything on her body is provided by her husband.
Yeah. And
How,
it includes fancy stuff. Stuff that he really probably wouldn't care about if she wasn't around.
right. I mean, like above and beyond just absolute necessary things. They have in excess.
Yeah. And it's not that men never enjoy, like, the finer things in life. You know,
Right.
if it tastes especially good, anybody's going to enjoy it. If it's especially comforting, a softer bed or a firmer mattress, depending on what you go for, and furniture that's more comfortable, in a place that's in a quiet, safe area as opposed to a dangerous area. Yeah, those things men would have done maybe whether there were women around or not, right? But having a place made to impress other people, you don't usually see men living without women as the center of their lives doing that. It's unusual, and it's unusual enough that sometimes other people are suspicious of their masculinity because of it when they do. It doesn't mean that they're unmasculine, but it does raise suspicions when somebody goes against the norm in any area of their social life and their behavior, their overt behavior. So, that tells you that that's against the norm. Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 311, an idle mind is the devil's playground. Is it just me, or did you notice how many feminists were privileged women whose children were raised by governors or governesses and boarding schools? These women wanted for nothing.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I have had conversations on Twitter with women like this, and they'll talk about gadgets or lifestyle choices. Like one of them, this was a while back, but I got into an argument about something, and she brought up, well, the next time you go on vacation, and I was like, do what? I go where? You are presuming a lot, lady. Do you know how often I take days off work and why I take days off work? I take days off of work to do other work.
Right.
Vacation my ass. I haven't had a vacation in 20 years. I was not an adult, I don't think, the last time I had a vacation that wasn't a working vacation.
Jesus.
Which basically means you go someplace fun to do some work, and you think of it as a vacation because it's someplace fun. But yeah. Yeah, these women are out of touch. It's not that it's not normal to go on vacation, but like they don't have an idea that other women maybe don't have the same cushy lifestyles that they have, and that the cushy lifestyle they do have was at the expense of men's labor and men's risk. But yeah. The error. Oh my god. She's correcting all of mankind.
Yeah.
For building civilization. How dare you? By excluding women, men have interfered for too long with the development, interests, and intelligence of humanity.
Wow.
Men have always kept women in subjugation. To acknowledge them as equals would have destroyed their own pedestals.
Oh my god.
They have opposed an even partially woman-governed world, fearing a limitation of their own undisputed freedom. So, like, all that shit you hear from feminists today, that goes back. It's not new. Men have insisted not only that we live in a man-governed world, but that we worship in man-dominated church, and we can no longer accept this. And they didn't either, because today's churches, very gynocentric.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to mess with this a little bit to get the last paragraph on the screen. But I look at this, and every sentence of it, every complaint that feminists make that sounds like this, right? You have to ask again, like Lauren said, how were they dominated if they're equal?
Mm-hmm.
If you have two populations with the same intelligence and the same strength and the same values, right? The same determination, the same ingenuity, the same characteristics of being able to get shit done. How does one hold the other one back for centuries? Like, not just by use of weapons and violence, because women were not rounded up with guns and chained.
Right.
Women were just living among men the whole time, and could go where they wanted to go, and could meet together without men in the room to supervise what they were doing. So women had all this opportunity. They were the ones who cooked the food. They were there when men were sleeping. They had every opportunity to have a revolution at any point in human history.
Yep.
And yet they waited until civilization progressed to the industrial age before they got mad about being subjugated throughout all of history by a population that was no better than they were at anything. Allegedly. Catherine Scully says this is her second husband. This woman was divorced. Oh my God.
Wow.
This is her second husband. Her first was a Vanderbilt.
Oh my God. No. Canceled. Canceled. I'm sorry. No.
So the rich lady who was rich twice is mad because men made her life easy. Too easy.
This lady is Anderson Cooper's long relative.
Oh my God,
Some kind of ancestor.
Telemnar gave us a $50 super chow. Thank you, Telemnar, and said, the opening ideas of this woman and her position in life reminds me of Marx talking about fixing all the problems in the world while living off of charity and Engels' factory money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maximum grandiosity. Not a great track record.
No.
It's kind of like phenomenal cosmic power, itty bitty living space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the itty bitty living space is in her head.
Yes.
He goes on, in physical sports it's not that surprising, but the difference in performance in esports, i.e. video games, is also significant. Well, reflexes are a big factor in sports all around. And a good example is, I'll give you one of my fuck-ups. When I was running hurdles my freshman year in high school, was my peak my freshman year. Because after that, it didn't get a lot of curves, but I got some. and it does fuck up the way you run and the way you jump and stuff. It changes everything. So I ran the women's hurdles, and they called it men's and women's, even though we were like 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. You know, there were some 18-year-olds in school, but yeah. So we're running, and the girls and the guys are practicing together. So we have like a couple of lanes of the intermediate height hurdles for the gals, and then we have a couple of lanes of the high hurdles for the guys, and they're spaced farther apart too. And we could see that they were jumping higher hurdles, and I think they had one less in their bunch of hurdles, and they could see that we were jumping lower hurdles, but we had one more. So In one way, it's kind of equal. In the other way, it's kind of like, well, we have an easier jump, but they don't have to do as many. And then, we get to talking about it, and the gals had the excuses coming out their ears, right? Well, women are not as tall as men. Boys are taller than girls. We need shorter hurdles than you guys. We can't get over the tall hurdles. And I'm looking at the tall hurdles, right? And I was I was 5'8", but I had the legs of somebody that was 5'9" because they were already as tall as they were gonna get. And so I'm just like, I could do that. I could jump those. So we have this argument. No, you can't jump those. Those are too tall. Girls can't do that. So I did. I went down and jumped. I want to say the entire one, the whole set of them. And they weren't really, they were high, but they weren't really that high. The hurdles I was going over were shorter than my legs, so I could just step over them. And those hurdles were actually a challenge, but I could do it. Come back, I was as tall as half the guys that were doing those hurdles. And the gals were kind of annoyed, and the guys were kind of laughing. Because, I was at least 3 or 4 inches taller than all the other gals there. So, it was just me. I was the only one that could do it.
Wow.
And, so I didn't prove that women can do men's sports or anything like that. But I did, know this truth. So, Pax Max says this stream is private on YouTube. Is that by design? No, it is not by design. I wonder if I can fix it. Everything had to go wrong with this. I gotta tell you, I don't understand why everything has to be like this. I don't know if I can fix it during the stream. We'll see if it lets me. It says visibility public.
Hmm.
That's very strange. Okay. Albert Nader Retro gave us $2 Canadian and said Trump was found guilty on all counts. A topic for Friday? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I expect an appeal because there were a lot of shenanigans taking place there.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it says it's public. I don't understand why it's private. Is that happening to anyone else that it's showing as not public
Let's check.
for on YouTube? Because it's showing as public for me. And it's Women as Dictators, HBR Talk 311. Yeah, and it's not showing as a private stream for me, but it might not be because I'm logged in. In any case, the punchline of this whole story is I went back to the women's hurdles, and remember I said they were spaced differently? So I went back to practicing, and I overstepped, and I brought my leg up under the crossbar of one of the hurdles and flipped in the air, flew about 10 feet and sideways on the track, landed, and it was a track that we were really fortunate. A local tire plant, a local Goodyear tire plant, had donated that track. So it was made out of rubber that had been ground up and then put together to make the track. So there was no cinder, because it used to be common for tracks to be covered with cinder, and I would have just had cinder embedded in my skin. I know this because I've had cinder embedded in my skin before from road rash. But
It's not unpleasant.
no, the unpleasant part of having cinder embedded in your skin is having the doctor use a hard scrub brush for 45 minutes to get it out.
Oh God.
Yeah. that was fun. But in any case, yeah, I slid down the track, and as I I look as I'm flying through the air, and 3 of the guys are running in my direction. Like, they didn't even wait until I landed. They, like, all came running over to see if I was okay. And one of the guys in my class, who was from my neighborhood, who was always a real smartass, as soon as he could see from my face that I was all right, because they were used to seeing me do shit like this at the park all the time and look like I had just killed myself and then get up and dust off and be like, I'm okay. You know? So before I got a chance to get up and dust off and say anything, he goes, "Safe at home!" with the motion and everything.
Oh.
That's like totally diffused it. But basically, you know, I just showed up all the other girls, so I had to have a fuck up after that to make it look bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, you know, you can be good at something because of your physique. You can be good, and reflexes matter quite a bit. I knew in the split second as my foot was coming up, I knew I had fucked up, and I didn't have the reflexes. If I had the right reflexes, I could have dodged that. I could have raised my foot a little more, or I could have, if I was coming, when I was actually under the hurdle with my foot, I could have just pulled it back and twisted, and I would have just rolled, and it wouldn't have been that bad. And our man says, "Well, Hannah, I stepped on a small cactus once. That hurt, pulling all that stuff up." Yeah, I accidentally punched a cactus once. It's not. I wasn't in a fight with the cactus. I was running toward a window to see a visitor that I was really happy about, and I forgot there were cactuses on a table in front of the window, and I was just so intent on the visitor that as I'm running, my fist just bam right into the little cactus. So the whole back of my hand is just covered in little cactus spines. My mom had to pull them all out.
Oh my God.
But we could get into discussing stupid things that I did that like I put a nail through my foot before I stepped in hot coals and got 3rd-degree burns on my foot. Like, that was very much about the nail. And then it was about the Epsom salts, because I thought those would, you know, make it so I didn't have to tell my mom. I still should have told my mom. I never did, but I should have, because I could have got tetanus from that. That hurt to pull that out too, and then putting my foot in the Epsom salts was really not a good idea. My brother discovered that I actually did know all the bad words, and I just didn't use them. Like, I knew every single one. But yeah, so here we are with this woman and her privilege talk, right? That's all set off by that one super chat. That's really horrible. But yeah, so we are looking at this woman and her elitism and her God. I just can't believe that people didn't see this for what it was at the time.
Yeah.
Like, some people had to. So yeah, reflexes may be a factor. Telomnar also said, "Men have always worked for themselves. If that were the case, every bridge built by men would ban women from using it or from benefiting from its use. And yet this somehow never happens." This woman might have been based on the suffragette from Mary Poppins. No, the suffragette from Mary Poppins might have been based on her. She had a rich hubby who ensures that she wants for nothing, servants for housework, and a nanny so she does not have to raise her own kids. Such an oppressed woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think Mary Poppins took place in England, and this woman was in the United States. So it's both sides of the pond. The suffragettes were these privileged princesses of their time. Jim MCL says, "Bringing up memories for me. I had a blowgun dart in my foot when I was 12.
Oh, jeez.
Yep. Yeah. The weirdest thing I ever had stick in my foot was the pinchers of a beetle. It's one of my earliest memories. I was so young that walking, I remember, was a solid effort. I actually had to think about what I was doing in order to not fall over. And I was doing that. I was walking in the backyard of the house where we lived, which was in a a woods that I was actually allergic to, and I'm walking there in leaves. It was the fall, and I see this bug on the ground, and it's struggling more than I am. So I watched it, and I watched it walk right up to my foot, and it didn't occur to me to not, because I'd never had a bad experience with a bug before.
Mm-hmm.
But this one had these big circular pinchers that stuck out in front of its head. It was really weird looking shape. It looked like, I was thinking of it, I had a rattle that was similar when I was littler. And that actually is my earliest memory. But it got to my foot, it bumps into my big toe, and it's like somebody snaps their fingers, and you see these pinchers just fly open and slam shut really fast on my toe, and we couldn't get it off.
Oh, God.
And I don't know what kind of beetle it was. I don't know the name of the type of beetle. I haven't really seen very many other beetles like that since then in Ohio. But that little fucker was so stubborn. When they finally... My mom and dad got pliers and pulled its pinchers apart, the sock came off with the damn thing.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. That was a heck of a experience. Dad said they could hear me screaming in the next county because I was a little kid and I was in pain, so there you go. But yeah, my feet have been badly abused.
I'd say, Jesus.
And it's mostly my own doing, my own curiosity. I just wanted to see what the beetle was going to do. And, what they say, fuck around, find out.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my tuition most of my life, was the find out part. So, this is probably why Twitter feminists think I was a boy and think I'm a man now. But she says, and this is something that men maybe didn't take this seriously because these women were privileged princesses and they were standing around throwing temper tantrums and having all this bullshit, that they said. But she says, "We are going to make the necessary changes, but not for the sake of women alone. I have no nearsighted idea that what is done for women and children is not to the advantage of men also." So there's a glitch in feminist thinking, right? What men do to create all of civilization, that's only for men. But what women do to tear it down, that's for everybody.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's an interesting question. When that that blowgun dart, that would be hell. When that happened, you have to pull it out with pliers. Would it be one of those moments where you look at it in shock for a few seconds before the pain sets in? That does happen in real life, by the way. That is a thing. That happens with burns, really, a lot. That happened with the nail too.
Oof.
So, but she goes on. "In short, we are not working against men, for women. When we speak of women as dictators, we are working for the human race." Because it's totally bad when men act unilaterally and women don't have power, right? As according to what she's saying here. But if women do the same thing, that fixes the problem. Two wrongs totally make a right.
No, when women are in charge, everybody's gonna suffer.
Yeah. She says, "The day is not far off when the Women's Party, of which I am president, will be strong enough to impose any measure it may choose." And this, she was not kidding. Because feminism is the women's party. Right? And we now have a buttload of law and policy that essentially is dictated by feminists. And it has resulted in the erosion of everyone's due process rights, the erosion of the family unit, and family, not just family unity, but family autonomy from the community, from the government. Right. And it has resulted in an erosion of the overall relationship between men and women. Like, it has resulted in an erosion of the ability of the population to maintain itself. So we're now in this low birth rate scenario that scares the shit out of people who collect taxes and stuff, right? It has resulted in the erosion of children's access to their fathers. So now we have a situation in which, instead of being able to be raised by both parents and be given the best opportunities in life to be able to develop characteristics that will make the individual powerful enough in their own sphere of existence to overcome obstacles and deal with challenges and be self-supporting and stuff like that. Like, now we have a huge swatch of the population that can't do those things or is challenged at doing those things because feminist law. So, yeah, she wasn't kidding. We're no, not about the not working against men part. She made that up. That was bullshit. But the bit about we're gonna get this done. We're gonna be able to impose any measure we may choose. That happened. And here's where she starts the long march through the institutions. Our first task is an educational one. We mean to plant the idea of independence in the mind of every woman. When she says independence, we're talking code for hating men and demanding the same rights that men have without the responsibilities that men have to uphold in order to obtain those rights. Right? They want the rights, not the responsibilities. An educational one, huh? Our party will be the woman's party, and a woman's party only. It will have no members. Let's see if I can take this down. Oop. No officers. There we go. No employees who are not women. I have no intention of repeating the experience of the American Red Cross, which, in spite of the fact that it was founded by a woman, is run entirely by men. Gee, I wonder why that happened. You think it might be because men are the ones who get shit done?
Right.
Every big, high-salaried position in the organization is now filled by some men. Well, duh, because, again, who's the ones that are getting shit done?
Some men. So, not all men, but some of them. It's like...
Yeah. It will never be possible for that to happen in the Woman's Party. There is a clause in the deed of gift of the property in Washington, the property on which the new Parliament building will be erected, which provides that it reverts to my estate the moment any man is given official position, employment, or salary. So, she is a woman who benefited from being married to not one but two rich men, and this is what she did with their money.
Nasty work.
We will never get a balance of power except through rigid rules like these. The world makes its adjustments by swinging to extremes, she says. Like, so she's really out there talking about excluding men. She's talking about changing law and policy. She's talking about educating women. Right? She's talking about gaining institutional power.
Yeah.
She's talking about manipulating society. Right? And she's talking about how great women are for being able to do this. And everything that she's using to do it came from men. There will be no men involved in this, right? But everything she's using to do it came from men. It's just pathetic.
Really is. It really is.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but that's just, yeah. So the National Women's Party. By the way, the National Women's Party was, I want to say it was dissolved just a few years ago.
Wow. I wonder what precipitated that.
Okay, that's Wikipedia. I don't know if I can trust that. Yeah, ceased to operate as an Alice Paul Institute says the National Women's Party ceased to operate as an independent nonprofit in 2020. Today, its legacy is maintained by 3 institutions, that one and 2 others. So it's a long running. She started this, if I understand correctly, and at the time it was the big wig feminist organization. Let's see. And this parliament that she's talking about, I don't really see a lot about it. So it must have been short-lived. But as like I said, I will be doing more additions to the timeline in regard to this, because I'm sure that it's hard to find stuff on search engines, because a lot of them just default use Google, and Google suppresses things. But this did exist. I mean, she's referring to it in this article. So it started with this article, and she deeded this property for this building, and it probably is something that was concurrent with the women's party. It's just not discussed as much or whatever. The search engines want to default to how many women are in Congress and shit like that, which we don't really need to know for purposes of understanding this article. But yeah, so she basically rigged it so that it would disappear if men were given position, any official position, or employment, or in salary. So only women could be involved in this initiative.
Yeah, you can't play with my toys.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. It was the No, it's 1920, not 2020. That it was yeah, so it was started in 1916. No, after 1920, it advocated for other issues, including the Equal Rights Amendment. That's Wikipedia. So, but anyway, it says, by the way our membership is increasing, it is evident that our organization will be a colossal thing in a very short time. We know the gigantic proportions of our task, and we are not afraid of it. We mean to free women from the indignity of hanging on to the old political parties. Women have to stop being followers. They will never get anywhere unless they begin to initiate. Perhaps there is something very glorious about being a helpmate, but if so, it's time some men shared that glory. So she was wanting to put men in the kitchen. And she says if there is something very glorious about being a starter, an initiator, a leader, it's time women shared that too.
You know, you don't share. You know what I mean? Like, oh God, you have to do something if you want to be a leader. You can't just say, "Oh, I want to do that too." That's not the way it works. You know, and it just sounds like it's coming from a spoiled brat.
Yeah. Yeah, and just for context, this woman is writing this and saying these things, and making this big ruckus about women being held back by men, and women not being able to do things for themselves, and women not having any power, and women not being the ones, amassing the wealth and all that stuff. After, let's see, she wrote this in 1922, so that's 2 years after the death of Madam C.J. Walker, who was the first self-made female millionaire. Madam C.J. Walker was a black woman who lived in the North, and I can't remember what state she lived in. I want to claim her for Ohio, but it's probably not right. She lived in New York, I think. But she invented products. She ran across a problem herself personally. She had difficulties with her hair, where I think she had that disorder that caused hair loss, alopecia.
Alopecia.
Yeah, and she created hair products to deal with that. Instead of just, she didn't find anything on the market that was satisfactory, and she started creating hair and makeup products and selling them, and she built her wealth from scratch. Like, she worked, and then she did this on the side, and then she marketed herself, and she had a good product. She had a whole bunch of good products, and they became, like, people are still using this stuff that she came up with today. And she didn't ask for any men's permission. She didn't ask for, any help of, doing this, coming up with these ideas, inventing these things, fixing the problem for herself, and then helping other women fix the problem for themselves, right? She just did it because it needed to be done. So that's the difference between a woman who does stuff and a woman who whines about not being allowed to do stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, here she goes. This time women shared that.
It's too bad we don't have more women like that,
Yeah.
That attitude.
Yeah, like there's a history of female entrepreneurs like this, who every time feminists talk about women's history, they shit on these women. Like, they never did what they did, and their ingenuity wasn't worth anything, and their initiative wasn't worth anything, and all that. Like, it didn't stop her from having family and relationships and living her life. It was just part of that. Just like with a man. So she says, our Mrs. Belmont says, the strength of man has always been in the union of men, and the weakness of women in her lack of union. So she's claiming women have no in-group bias. It is necessary to make women realize that until they have achieved some sort of solidarity, they will never be able to impose their will upon the state.
That's ominous.
Yet impose their will upon the state. Not get equal say, right? Not gain equal footing. Impose their will upon the state. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's what the plan was.
I mean, she's been clear from the beginning. I got to give her that.
Yeah.
She's got that dictatorship
A lot
ship
more
shit
lot
down pat.
lot more honest than modern feminists. Oh no,
Yeah.
we're not trying to be dictators. We're just
Right.
asking for, a little of our own back.
Right. Right. Or you get the if women were in charge, there'd be peace. There'd be world peace.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, peas are pretty good if you whirl them with like cream cheese, or not cream cheese but sour cream. Sorry. It would be pretty good with cream cheese actually. But yeah, world peace. The strength of man. The strength of man has always been in his ingenuity, right? And his problem solving impulse. You see a
Mm-hmm.
problem? Well, you got to do something about it. You see a puzzle? You got to solve it, right? You see a question? You got to find the answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's men. That's why we have civilization, because that's men.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, her goal is women imposing their will upon the state. Men have always tried to isolate women, she says, to keep them as creatures apart. And it's totally men that did that. Can't possibly be women just not doing the same things that men did.
Right. No. It's not like they liked staying inside and not being outside in the sun working, doing manual labor. No, no, they
Yeah.
absolutely hated not doing any of that shit. Oh God.
Men have always tried, or have always put women in houses. Oh, the poor dears. I'm in a house! Oh no! Animals can't eat me! What am I gonna do? Um, Shut them away behind walls, kept them for themselves, as opposed to what?
Oh my God, this joke came a little bit late, but I'm gonna say it anyway. That you should be happy that he's keeping you in the house because most of you belong in the barn.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is she like thinking about her horses now?
Yeah.
Which she probably had. Detained them apart from the community, which is why women have their own publications that are written by other women who work professionally to do that writing, because women were kept in the house apart from their community. Men used to put women in a harem. Now we're getting into fantasy here. Now they put them in a home. But the home, like the harem, has considered its own interests rather than the interests of the community. And in so doing, it has jeopardized its well-being instead of fostering it. The home, like the individual, is insufficient when it stands alone. Oh, God. So she's mad, basically, because families have autonomy here, which
Hmm.
actually doesn't have any bearing on the well-being of the community. In fact, I'll revise that. It doesn't have any negative bearing on the well-being of the community. When families have autonomy, they have incentive. Your autonomy comes with responsibility for yourself. And so you have incentive to preserve an environment in which you're going to have an easier time meeting the responsibility for maintaining your own safety and so on, right? So you're going to want to maintain a good community, and you'll want to work together with people in the community and treat them fairly in exchange for fair treatment from them. But apparently most women don't think that way, I guess, because she didn't. She says, if a man commits an indiscretion, all other men protect him. that's why we have jails, to protect men who commit an indiscretion, right?
And women don't do that?
Well, but the thing is, like, it's not true about men.
Yeah.
Men
That is
created. Think of the devices that men created to hold other men accountable for criminal activity throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
We have it easy today, right? Men even have it easy today in comparison to men throughout history. I just, some things sound ridiculous, like the idea of thumb screws sounds ridiculous, but it was torture. It was incredibly painful torture.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, just look at the like the medieval torture devices that they
Mm-hmm.
used to use. You know what I mean? Like it. No,
In
that's a.
many old societies, you steal something, you get your hand cut off,
Hmm.
right? Even if your family is starving, even if you steal because your family is starving, well, you still get your hand cut off.
Yep.
You know, and men were held accountable for things that women were not held accountable for. In many old societies, they didn't recognize any form of sexual violence perpetration by women. But if a man did it, in some places that resulted in death. He would be put to death for it. You know, unless the alleged victim said, "No, I wasn't a victim. I was in on it, and I'll marry him."
Yeah.
You know, but and that is a way, by the way, of trapping somebody into marriage too. You know, marry me or die is pretty persuasive.
Yeah.
You know, unless it's Andrea Dworkin, and probably the guy would have said, "No, I'll take the death penalty."
You know what? I've lived long enough.
I can't live with that. I'll take the pig.
What is life anyway?
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, that one. If a man commits an indiscretion, all other men protect him. No, they cut his head off, they hang him, they cut his hands off, they whip him for hours. You know, they force him into chains and put him into hard labor. Um, they make him marry the bitch. Like,
Yeah.
no.
The only people that protect men that do shit like that are complicit. You know. Uh, nah, it's not a thing, lady.
Yeah. Nobafan21 gave us $1 on Rumble and said, "Sure, would be a shame if when society collapses, the only history of how men treated women are the ones where feminists describe their so-called oppression during a more stable society." He also said, half of Red Pill YouTube channels, feminism may have had a point back in the day when they were getting women the right to vote. Feminism back in the day, meanwhile.
Yeah.
Thanks for both of those, Nobafan. And yeah, this is what we're looking at as the history of feminism, was that their goal was always to impose their will on the state, and they always hated and blamed men for everything. Then she says, if a woman is at fault, other women, instead of protecting her, are often the first to condemn. And again, this really depends on what's being accused.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's true that prosecutors used to say that you wouldn't be able to convict a woman of murder unless you could put women on the jury because men wouldn't do it. Like,
Yeah.
men were too concerned for the welfare of the woman, right? And they had just assumed that she must have had a good reason. But
Yeah.
women would convict. But if you start bringing up abuse, partner abuse, women today certainly don't condemn. Women are not often the first to condemn. In fact, women often excuse it by saying, "Oh, it's just a slap." You know,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, women barely do anything, and then men give them a beat down." Women who abuse their men do things like calling the cops and having the cops come and beat them up and throw them in a cage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they hit them with a frying pan, throw knickknacks at them that are made out of clay,
Yep.
pour boiling water on them when they're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
It's not minor stuff, right? Yeah, there are women who, when they get mad, they slap, and that is still hitting. It's still abuse. It's still not okay, and you still have a right to defend yourself from it. That won't be respected at all by the state.
Yep.
But that's not the limits of women's violence by any stretch of the imagination. And when women do that, they are minimizing men's experiences. They're not often the first to condemn. They're often the first to condemn the person saying women can be violent. She says, women in the past have been afraid to lose the respect or admiration or the love of men by opposing their wishes. Except that we learned that
Wait a minute.
feminism goes back to the was it the 12th century, medieval times.
So these men who just throw you in homes and they don't respect you, but they respect you and they they admire you and they what?
Yeah, why would you be afraid to lose the respect and admiration of somebody that you are angry at for confining you to quarters?
Right. Right.
Let's see. So women have been afraid by opposing their wishes. In the last few years, the suffragists have demonstrated that women do not lose the admiration of the worthwhile men by expressing their own individualities. So only men who agree with women are worthwhile now.
Mm-hmm.
On the contrary, it has been my experience that the modern man finds the intelligent, socially conscious, individualistic woman a more companionable person than her frightened sister who fears to speak or move lest she offend him. So we have two types of upper-class women, right? We have the bombastic ballbuster, and we have the one who's comfortable with her situation and doesn't want to rock the boat. They don't like each other.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
There we go. Women gain far more than they lose by an attitude of independence. So is she gonna start earning her own money and pay the bills?
Yeah, exactly. God.
Independence!
Mm-hmm.
In my own experience, I have seen a tremendous evolution in a very short time. Take the question of divorce. Oh, she's going to talk about her divorce now. Right?
Oh boy.
This isn't the whole thing, right? So this is, I don't have the second page, so we'll have to stop here. I don't know if I'll be able to find the second page of this, but I still wanted to go over it anyway. And in my experience, I've seen a tremendous evolution in a very short time. Take question of divorce. It is not long since no woman dared openly criticize a man's behavior by demanding a divorce from him. Men have learned that they have to accept our criticism of them. So this is blackmail. Accept our criticism or we'll leave.
Yeah.
She says, I was one of the first women in America to dare to get a divorce from an individual man. Influential man, sorry. Up to that time, divorce had been the prerogative solely of actresses. Rich men could marry women, treat them in any way they chose, and ignore them. That is no longer possible. I have gone down the aisle of the church when women I had known since childhood drew back in their pews and refused to speak to me. So there we go.
It's probably for more than one reason, lady.
She's and I know what she's got going on here. She's going to have a whole paragraph of complaints about how women look down on her for being divorced. Not men, women. But she's going to blame men.
Yep.
So I'll see if I can find the rest of this, because I know where I found this. And this is an archive of it because the I want to say the original was removed. So this might be all there is. But I'm going to try searching bits of the text over the week and see if we can read the rest of this next week. But if we can't, you get the gist of it. This woman wrote this article with the idea that throughout history, men have oppressed women by excluding them from the vehicles of power. And that women are going to use social influence to counter that. And that women have never done that before. These are all things we hear from modern feminists.
Mm-hmm.
This is 100 years ago. This article is 100 years old. 102, actually.
God.
So they've been saying this shit for a century, and nothing has changed. Right? They have now gotten the power to get laws passed just by saying feminists want this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still saying that stuff about
Right.
men today. There you go.
So oppressed.
Yep.
So oppressed.
Poor oppressed women. Oh my gosh. So actually, Telminar, looks like Telminar found it already. Let me see if I can find the rest, or if I can open it. And yes, that is it. That is the article, because that's the second half. So next week, thank you, Telminar. You are a lifesaver. That means I don't have to do that research, and I can use the time on that timeline instead. These will be going on the timeline, by the way. And it's 4 pages, so we'll continue reading this while I continue adding to the timeline, and then we'll go back and we'll look at the timeline, and trace women's different pathway to universal suffrage than men's, which in the United States everybody meets up at 1965, so we're getting closer. So, but with that, I think I am gonna call it for the night. Because we've been on since just a little after 7, and this is awesome. Somebody sent it as a super chow. Oh, Telminar, there we go. Awesome. So that way I can open it from that super chow next week. He said he gave us $20 and said women worked communally all the time. This shut away in houses is more true of wealthy women than of poor ones, and not necessarily true for them either. Wealthy women were expected to be socialites, organize parties and get-togethers, etc. Harems were very unusual, only for the elite men. The vast majority had one woman or none, and that's true too. Something that people don't realize about men throughout human history, incels have been the majority of men.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about incels like they're some little secret that you can just keep in the closet and not deal with them. They have been the backbone of every country's military throughout history, because they are the ones that the leadership treats as the most disposable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after we get done with the history lesson on voting rights, we probably need to do a history lesson on the relationship between men who were unmarried and childless and military exploitation of conscription, because that's another big part of it. Women might not like hearing this, but ladies, mostly incels got you your right to vote. Mm-hmm. It was the sacrifice of their blood.
Absolutely right.
Yes, there were family men. Yes, there were men with power. Yes, there were men with privilege that were involved. And yes, their blood was spilled too. But the cannon fodder, a lot of those men were incels. You owe your right to vote to incels, just as much as you do anybody else in history that fought for them.
Yeah, they're not going to want to hear that.
No. But yeah, so, and women, like Telminar was talking about, women got together to create goods and perform services for the community, both in times of plenty and comfort, when, they organized fun things, and they organized prepper things, making blankets and stuff to keep people warm, preserving food for the winter and so on. But yeah, they did all of that, and then women also, wealthier women that had more time on their hands and stuff, organized for all types of social reform, including prison reform, even in the early days. But yeah, her statements probably come from, as he says, her own experience living in a rich person's house. In most societies, people lived cheek by jowl, or the next field over, perhaps. Men try to protect men from accusations if they think they are false. But no woman would ever start a rumor or make false allegation, right? Does the right kind of man find the modern woman more interesting or just easier? And thanks again for that link to the full article, because this will help quite a bit. And it looks like I might have an easier time. That looks like it's a better image than the one that I found. So, yeah, the Home Alone never happened except if you... It'd be easy to live in isolation, though, if you lived in a big mansion like that. Nobody would be able to find you. What room is she in? I don't know. Let's start. We'll start with room number 1 and just work our way to room number 157. Like, whatever. So that is our last Super Chow. And I think that we are done with the Super Chats. I'm going to double check the Rumble Rants again, because I minimized that to open something else. Yep, that is our... Yep, that's... Yes, Telmanar, you absolutely rock. That is 100% true. So, thanks to everybody for listening. This isn't a long sausage, but it's an important one. And thanks, Lauren,
It's not the size of the sausage, Hannah, that counts.
That's right. It's not about the sausage. Thanks, Lauren, for coming on and talking with us, talking with me about this. This article is... There's more, and it's gonna piss you off.
It's something else already, man.
Yeah. And thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. And good night, all.
Good night, y'all.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit. You're fucked.